Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be the full finished build guide for the Carrion of Creation Vengeance Blade Paladin. So, I just want to let you guys know, I played this entire character in Circle of Fortune. I played it in the matter of like 3 days from a fresh start as I restarted because I did not like where the Merchants Guild economy was going. And it, for all intents and purposes, was a success. It has done every single piece of content I wanted it to do. The only thing that it didn't really do that well is Uber Aberoth. And I tried a little bit, and let me tell you, playing a melee build while also not dealing as much damage as I would want to be is not a good combo for Uber Aberoth. It's just simply not fun, so I'm not going to suggest it for said content. But it does everything else in the game, so that's all that matters, right? Really? Well, you know, you win some, you lose some. I'll be honest, if you would have told me last patch that there was a vengeance build, like an actual honest to God vengeance build that's actually using vengeance last patch and it was actually doing damage and it was actually doing content, I'd have laughed at your face. I'll be honest with you. I would have laughed at you. So the fact that this is even functional and actually working so well, to be honest, because I had a very smooth time with the character the whole entire way. Like the entire time, I did not feel like as though I had a dip in efficiency. I did not feel like as though I had a problem with the character. I just simply immediately went from, empowered monos to 700 corruption like it was nothing. Then I farmed there for a little bit, farmed some unclaimed troves and stuff like that, and some amber bags from Skarg, and that went really well. And then now we're just pushing 1,000 corruption like it's nothing. Feels good. The only thing I would say is I did not build enough movement speed on this character. You'll watch the footage in the background and you'll see me moving around like a slug. That's mainly because of the fact that I didn't actually hit movement speed on my 2 LP Blood of the Exile. I'll be honest, this entire time I've been farming 2 LP Blood of the Exiles to try to slam for movement speed and HP. And let me tell you, I did not hit a single one. So you get some crusty ass 40% movement speed gaming. Trust me, if you actually got some movement speed on your boots, it would look much better than the footage currently. Let me tell you. So, what did I feel about the build? How did I feel about it? I like it. I like the build. I like the concept. I like the fact that the iron blades are actually useful. They're not like completely useless. They seem like as though they scale with most of the stuff on the tree for vengeance. I'm not entirely sure. You'd have to do a very large amount of testing to figure out if iron blades are actually getting the modifiers inside vengeance's tree. But for everything I've seen so far, it seems like it works. You could take the node off and on. One thing to note, the iron blades do seem to be adding to the flame burst count. So I get more flame bursts because they count as melee hits. So that's something interesting. So we get a lot of flame bursts because of that. A lot more than I thought we would, to be honest. So that's really fun. Now, all in all, this build together, right, with the Carrion of Creation bleed explosions, with the Holy Flame explosions, right, and just Vengeance making you very tanky, all of it combined led me to having a very smooth time. Like, if you just want to turn your brain off and play with Vengeance and play auto attack, this is the build for you. If you just want to play auto attack the build, this is the build for you. If you want to do Uber Aberoth with any seeming efficiency, this is not the build for you. If you want to play with Carrion of Creation on Sentinel, this might be the build for you. I overall enjoyed my time with it, and I will be moving on now. But let's go into detail on the build, shall we? So how does this build work at its core? Well, we are building around Carrion of Creation. We are simply converting our Ignite, Frostbite, Shock, Time Rot, Damned, and Poison Chance all into Bleed Chance. All of it. Every single little bit. And we can abuse this a lot. We're also utilizing nodes like Blade Paladin inside of Vengeance, and we're scaling physical resistance. We're also abusing Flame Burst to give us a lot of extra clear. This on top of the bleed pops of Carrion of Creation is enough to like completely and utterly dominate our clear to the point where we don't even feel like we're playing basic attack sometimes. Penance alongside that bleed duration per endurance threshold is very strong, as we can use stuff like Sigils of Hope to juice up our endurance threshold while also scaling HP. It rewards us for doing so. Right now it's giving us like well over 80% increased bleed duration, which is enough to merit going Paladin over like, let's say, Void Knight. And then we're also using Iron Blade to try to juice up Vengeance's DPS even further with a smidgen of attunement investment. Now, let's talk about how we're abusing Carrion of Creation. Well, simply put, blessings are overpowered. Turns out when you can get 100% ailment chance from each of your blessings is kind of crazy, to be honest with you, because we can go to Lagan and get shock on hit. We can go to Raye and get Ignite on hit, and then we can go to Reign of Dragons and either get Poison on hit or, of course, Bleed Chance on hit. And then we could also go to Herat and get Frostbite on hit, but it's actually not relevant for this build, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we can also utilize modifiers like Sunwreath, where we get Ignite Chance on melee hit. That can be converted into Bleed Chance on melee hit, which is really nice. We can also abuse sources like Phoenix Strike inside, of course, Paladin. We can also use really strong unique items that were meant for poison and ignite that are very strong for our build. Like Eye of Reen, for instance, gives us well over 200% ignite chance on melee hit with a 2 LP source. And that is a lot of ailment chance. That is a very large amount of ailment chance. If you're aware of how ailments scale in last Epoch, that is an absurd amount of ailment chance on one item. And that on top of being on a very fast attacking weapon, all of that combined leads to just Eye of Reen being our best in slot very easily. And then, of course, we can get even more ailments on it. And, it's just crazy that we can even do this. And then Viper Tail is a lot of extra poison chance, and it has melee attack speed on the base. And I got really lucky and I got a double tier 6 on it. Ignore the elemental damage over time. I was happy that we got a double T7, I believe. And yeah, that's what we can do for Carrion of Creation, and it's really hard to see because the Holy Flame aura, but it's simply put, the Bleed Explosions from Carrion of Creation have a very large AoE in general. You could scale this further with like area of effect affixes, but I feel like it's not really that important because the problem is you're never going to get away from the fact that you're using Vengeance, which is like, a basic attack pretty much. So you're always going to be stuck to like a little bit of a cone in front of you. So Carrion of Creation just simply smooths that process out a lot. Now we are utilizing Blade Paladin. We are just stacking as much physical resistance as possible. We're using our Herat Blessing for physical resistance because we have plenty of armor. That's 62% physical bleed pen. Abyssal Endurance is 40% bleed pen. And these idols, as you can see here, we can run 4 of them and then run a bunch of bleed duration idols as well on the side. But we can run 4 of these idols and they can be bleed chance, bleed pen, because of the Weaver affix, and up to 23% physical resistance, which then of course gets turned into physical penetration with bleed. Right now we have well over 200% penetration with bleed for our Vengeance, and this is just simply the start. I did not invest much into this concept so far. You can push this much farther than I have. You could easily double your physical resistance if you simply just min-max the affixes on your gear, but I am Circle of Fortune, therefore I have no gear. Now, for Iron Blades, we aren't sure how it exactly works. All we know is it seems like as though it does inherent all of the more damage modifiers and everything inside Vengeance's tree. It's a melee attack as well. It counts as a melee attack, so it procs stuff like Holy Flame Burst. I've seen that happen before. And it works on a lot of stuff like that. It seems like as though it inherits the penetration based on your physical resistance scaling. And the most important thing of all, it seems like as though if you hit an enemy, proc an Iron Blade from him, that same Iron Blade can go and hit that same enemy, I believe, because the Iron Blades start from your character and then move through said enemy, and it pierces through all enemies. So it seems like as though this is simply just doubling your DPS as long as you have enough attunement scaling. Now, generally, scaling it into attunement isn't that good, but we are getting healing effectiveness per attunement because we're a paladin, but I would heavily suggest investing into sources like Pearls of the Swine or Red Ring of Valeria, where you get all attributes instead and trying to get to 40 attunement that way instead of trying to go with the approach of just stacking attunement. Because with this build, every single prefix and every single suffix could be damage We could run physical resistance. We could run percent damage. We could run ailment chance. We could run duration. We could even run even more ailment penetration. We could run all of these things instead of attunement. So you definitely want to try to cheese said attunement, whether that be on the tree, whether that be through all attribute sources. You generally don't want to be investing affixes into attributes. Now, if Iron Blade works differently than I am talking about here, then it's not my fault. It's really hard to test, to be honest with you. Now, it's not a secret. I did not invest much into this character, mainly because I was trying to keep it down to earth and something that people could actually replicate. I could spend the next month playing this character and refining it to a T and pushing its DPS even further, and then eventually probably doing Uber Abroth with it. But that doesn't really do much for you, the viewer, because you're not going to give a shit about that. So you're not going to give a shit when every single affix on my item is like a 2 LP Carrion of creation with like double tier 6, because that's the kind of thing I'd be farming for if I wanted to push this build further. Now, one thing you could do is, of course, going double red ring. This is the defensive option. You can get a lot of less damage taken from it. Also, remember that 18% all resistance, that's physical resistance too, so it's penetration for us. And also as well, it fixes our attunement needs with the +4 to all attributes as well. That combined with a little bit of extra attunement here and there can get us to the cap of attunement we need. Or you can go for the big dick damage and go with double Sunwreath with 3 LP. Now, you could go for some really crazy Sunwreaths. You can use stuff like the COF, like Unclaimed Trove abuse, where you imprint double exalted rings and eventually get a double tier 7 and then slam that on 2 Sunwreaths, because you end up just pooping out a bajillion Sunwreaths when you're trying to farm out red rings. Eventually you'd have a really good pair of Sunwreaths, and you could use that on top of, you know, a really good ring, and you can end up with some disgusting damage from your rings. Could that be good? Yeah, it probably could be good, to be honest with you. Eventually, you'd probably want a 2LP Carrion of creation with physical resistance on it as well. We're almost to the point where we're tanky enough for the most part. I can tank most things. I can tank 1,000 Corruption Harbingers like it's nothing. I can just sit in their attacks for the most part, and I can sit in Orbis's attacks as well. That's almost to the point where you'd be happy with tankiness. Now, there is, like, of course, you'd want to eventually phase tank the Slam from Uber Aberoth, but, like, you know, that's a lot of investment to get to that point, so you probably can just dodge that and just push more damage, which is what this Carrion of creation setup would be with that. And eventually, Blood of the Exile, you'd want 2 different pairs. You'd want one with HP and movement speed, and then one with physical resistance and movement speed, because in boss fights, you don't need as much movement speed. Simply movement speed is simply a lubrication to get you from point A to point B, unfortunately, because last Epoch is filled with a lot of maps that are big, and you want to be moving through them fast. And unlike PoE 2, you can actually build said movement speed. And then, of course, you could, you know, use a boot swap to get even more damage with like something like this. This is like why this character is so interesting to me, because you can dump into it investment to the point where, you know, you have so much physical resistance. Like, you could probably push over 1,000% physical resistance if you really fucking cared, right? Like, if you really wanted to push this further, you could push this further. Now, would you do all of that for basic attack? I don't know, but you could do it. You could. Now, one thing to note, I did not put it here, but you could go for a null portent as well. Null portent with like 2 LP and like double prefix on it would probably be good, although that would take a little bit longer, but it would be good. Null portent would give us a lot of less damage taken for sure. All right, and that's going to be it for me today. With all that being said, if you haven't already, I'd heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. And also, of course, leave a comment down below talking about how you feel about the build, as it seems like as though YouTube cares about that kind of stuff of late. So definitely give me some interaction down there, as it helps out the video. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to go do something else. Bye.